Good afternoon. The Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, April 11, 2022 will please come to order, and the clerk will call the roll.
And as a reminder to all who are in attendance and watching, this meeting is being live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Tuma,
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher is absent. Mr. Schrein is absent. Ms. Baker? Here. Ms. Turner?
Here.
There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. And has anybody signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for February 28th, 2022. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from February 28th, 2022. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes from February 28th, 2022 are approved. Matters referred to the committee are none, so we'll move on to our discussion items, and I am going to call forward Director Johnson. We have good news to report, and I understand that he is going to highlight some of the folks that helped bring us to this point, as well as give us an update. So please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd also like to call out that Audits is joining me. She's the project manager for this project and has basically taken over about 6 months ago or so, and has successfully delivered the project to this point. How does this sound? Better? Okay. Thank you. I won't bother repeating what I said, but other than to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. And I'd like to turn it over to Connie Geddes, our project manager for this ERP payroll workforce management implementation. Thank you.
So I would just make a note that I've been in contact with Connie on a weekly or more than weekly basis, and she has done an exemplary job of keeping me informed as to the successes and the challenges as we've gone along. So I really appreciate the collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. Shorter. All right, let's get the slides going here. Okay, so for today's agenda, nice, short and sweet. Again, we feel like we've got a very good story to tell. And as noted earlier, we did bring some of the team, as you can see behind us, that have helped get us to this point, and definitely want to make sure that they are recognized for all of their efforts. Okay, I think this slide says it all. We went live. So the important thing to understand here is not only did we just go live with our S3 payroll system, we went live with our time management system as well. The only thing to recognize here is that the time management portion has been staggered out to allow us to pay attention to certain groups as they were going into it. But as it stands right now, both systems are live in production. Okay, some of the stats that we have from our payroll, our first live payroll, which again was pay date 4/1. We had 7,123 pay records that were processed. So that was exceptional, right? Everybody got paid. That's the story that we want to go ahead and share with everybody. We had about 336 paper checks, 6,787 direct deposits. One thing to note here is that right now with this new system, we have the ability to go ahead and allow more than one banking institution for our deposits. So numbers will go ahead and fluctuate. We would expect to see that as people get more and more into the system and decide, how to use it to their needs. So with that, the next section here talks about the number of paper checks is typically around 200. So as I just previously mentioned, we were at 336 paper checks. A couple of the reasons why that happened, and I want to make sure that we're clear on this because on Thursday's small council meeting, I had mentioned it was specific to credit union pre-notes. So this was just banking financial pre-note processing itself. It could have been somebody gave us the wrong routing number. So what the pre-note's going to do is it's going to verify the information, the account information that we're sending over to the banks, making sure that the bank acknowledges that routing and bank account number. And if not, it sends us back that information so we can go ahead and make corrections. So for whatever those reasons are with this go live, we had 100 or so more than normal checks that we needed to go ahead and issue because of those bank processing issues. So out of 7,000 plus users, fairly minimal. We were still very happy with that number. We expect to go ahead and see that decrease for that payroll that will actually be processing this Friday. So more to come on those numbers, but again, we felt like we've made all the proper adjustments. Anything that came up, we were able to address it, not only address it quickly, but very effectively and work with the employees to make sure that they knew what was going on. All right, and then the last item is just the manual checks that were ran. So typically we run, I've been informed about 5 per pay period. We ran 27. So again, you could see there are a couple of different reasons around why that would happen. Maybe there was just a miscalculation in a time record. It could have been a banking issue. And 4 people weren't paid because they had the improper GHR status. So that's very important, right? If you're set in that system as inactive, you're not going to get paid. So those were some of the manual checks that we had to go ahead and issue. Any questions?
Ms. Baker.
Thank you. And just to, clarify, because I've been through this now for a number of, I guess I can even say years. But these issues that you're identifying seem like they're easy. They're not deep rooted. There's not a domino effect that if you fix one thing, something else is going to be impacted. These look like issues that, GR status or routing numbers or whatever it is are quick fixes that you would anticipate with over 7,000 pay records you're going to have. Am I correct to say that these are relatively easy to correct and that's why you're optimistic about the next run?
Absolutely, Councilman Baker. I felt that when we were announcing that we were getting ready to go live, that anything that we encountered, this would be typical business as usual issues. Now, again, we expected a little bit more, which we got, but significantly less than I think what others potentially expected. So I would say, yes, we'll go ahead. There was nothing that was of any major concern, nothing earth-shattering. We were able to address them, and that's the idea, right? You want to make sure you can identify an issue and resolve it as quickly as possible. And I think everything that we did, it could have been something that just took a while to process, right? We dove into it, and we're figuring out how do we make it better for the next payroll run. So, yeah, very pleased.
And if I may, Chair, unlike other modules that were launched, we always knew that payroll was something where we had to get it right because this meant people's money. This meant their quality of life. This cannot have any huge issues that we would have to go back to the drawing board and redo or bring in more people or get expert advice. You had to be pretty confident to launch payroll because of the significance of the impact of what it would do to our employees.
Yeah.
So I congratulate you on that. I mean, it's just amazing that we have come to this point and feel that secure about launching payroll. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, it was a huge team effort. And, I took the comfort in the fact that we have what I would call our resident experts in everything that they did. And it brought a lot of confidence, I think, amongst all of us. So that was great. Andy's leadership, of course, and his support was also very important. He was really good at bringing donuts.
So
Just kidding, he hasn't brought any yet.
I would just like to highlight the fact that we did have a long and agonizing process where we kept having delays and the schedule kept getting put back. But then we came to a point sometime around the middle of last year where we set a schedule for when this go live was going to happen. We set a process by which it was going to work, and we just stuck to it very, very closely and carried it through step by step, and that was very good to see.
Yeah, we felt then when we took the project over, we stripped a lot of it back down to the basics, and we built it back up. So we felt very confident that we knew what we were doing and taking the right steps. And again, it made it easy when you have the team that we have behind us here, that we're doing most of the work. So it was a very long time coming, but yes, in the scope of everything, it was less than 2 years from the time I got involved. So that's pretty significant for a project of this magnitude.
Okay.
And some of the team, you'll see, they've only been around for 6 months and they've done magic. So it all culminated in us feeling good as a team to get to this point where we felt confident we could go live, and not only go live, but go live successfully.
Okay. Proceed.
All right, speaking of, so I didn't want to go ahead and necessarily call anybody out, but I did want to go ahead and put a little bio of some things to call out and just recognize the team that helped us get there. So this is a culmination of the ERP team and the project management office.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may, in looking through Zig's report, which is after yours, I thought he captured it pretty well, that the kudos to the team is just remarkable, that some have been involved and dedicated for 6 years, that many have given up vacations, and many have worked long hours, as we all know they have. And the final 6 months has really been, as he put it, gut-wrenching. So we do appreciate the work that behind the scenes, have stepped up and done. And then we had COVID thrown in there too, trying to overcome all of that and working from your home remotely and coming in when you could. And I know that it's been fatigue has also played a role in this, and just overall morale, hard to keep things going. So I want you to know, and I know I'm sure others agree, that we appreciate all the time and effort that's been put in, that we don't see your faces, but we know that you're there and you're working hard, and you've given up a lot for this ERP system. And it's been a long road for us, been almost 6 years for me following this, and that was initiated before I even got here, so it's even longer than that. But we know that the work that's there, we could never have gotten this far without the work of the people that support you, and you come up and then tell us. And it hasn't been an easy road. It's been a pretty difficult one, and we've been critical at many times along the way. But we're here today, and I know we're not here alone. It happens for a meeting, and I just wanted to make sure you knew. At least I am very appreciative of your work.
Excellent, as are we. Okay, yeah, that's it, a page, right? And we did this whole system, 2 systems, right? Our timekeeping and the payroll. So I can't say enough.
I
So,
feel like I want to jump in here too. So, I'm sorry.
so could you introduce the people who are here and have them stand?
All right. So in no particular order, I'll start on the right here with Vicki Long. Vicki Long, really instrumental in making sure that our GHR, our current new system, our new system is in sync with our current system. So huge effort there. So absolutely appreciate Vicki's efforts towards the program. Next is Nico, and that's why I'll leave it at Nico because he's the only one. He's kind of like Cher, right? I mean, everybody knows who Nico is. And Nico is a recent addition to the team. He has stepped up from our service desk, has stepped in. He's like one of these young, just bohemians, right? That's just going to go nuts and take on the project, dig in, find out what those issues are, and just did a remarkable job for the team. So we're all very, very appreciative of Nico's efforts. Next, Bob Knoll. So a very special situation here is Bob left around, I don't remember exactly when it was, and so it took a pretty big recruitment effort, thanks to Connie, I think, having some conversations with Bob to entice him back. And Bob's leadership at a application technical level couldn't be replaced. He was a huge part of making this thing happen. And I know that I, for one, am very, very grateful that he came back to the county. So big success, big kudos to Bob for that. Next, Beth. So Beth Heath is was someone who gave me tremendous confidence that we were ready to go live with payroll. She is a payroll specialist from Cincinnati, moved to Cleveland to be closer to her son, and Beth, was supposed to be on a semi-retired basis, but logging 70 hours a week there at the end is not my definition of semi-retired. Again, I think I mentioned to her at one time that hearing her talk, hearing her say that we are ready to go live, gave me the confidence that we were. She knows her business. She was irreplaceable on this project, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to call her out. Okay, so then we've got Edie Cooksey. And Edie came on as an administrative assistant to the program. But Edie has kind of blossomed into a change management specialist. And you'll be hearing more about Edie as we go forward. She took the bull by the horns, is in contact with directors, in contact with the general user base, stakeholders, and she is responsible for letting them know what's coming. And one of the things that I, when we kick off projects of this nature, change management is huge. And so for Edie to step into that role and do really a remarkable job. You think about the change that had to go for 7,300 people. Edie is responsible and the hero in this effort to make sure that those 7,000 knew what was coming when they got new paychecks and was prepared for the new WFM. So huge shout out to Edie. And I think that's all we have from the, and of course with Connie, right? Connie took this over. We, she was on the project for a while, but then about 6 months or so ago, we really, if you remember, we made a change, and that's where I think we saw like some real solid acceleration happen with Connie's leadership. She absolutely made this happen. You should be running organizations, right? What she did with the payroll project was something that I haven't seen. Taking such a small team, and this team was extremely small. When you think about 7,000 people we need to change, and we've got a handful of people on this project. Connie took that team and led it forward. So I'm forever indebted to the effort that she did. The county should be forever indebted to the job that she did for this, bringing this forward. So thank you, Connie.
Everybody.
Thanks, Bill.
Yes, and let's not forget, sincerely, Andy's leadership, his support all along has gotten us here as well. It was so important the nights that we just had to talk through things, set priorities, just bounce ideas off, just making sure that we had his support was invaluable, and another reason. Again, just a great collaborative effort across the board. All right, so this is not a new slide. I just wanted to go ahead and basically point out, so we just started with Group 3 entering into the My Time system officially yesterday, but as most people start work on Monday, today. So that's real exciting. It's about 1,800 HHS employees. So we're very, very excited to see this one go through. Keep in mind, this is just the entry into the MyTime system. Everybody is getting paid out of the new payroll system moving forward. So, and that will continue to be the case. The only other thing of note here is that we did add Group 6, which is Board of Elections, due to just complex, timing on their end. We felt it was better to just go ahead and move them out. So they officially just squeak over into that third quarter. But from a reporting standpoint, we're great because we're already live with the payroll system and getting reporting out of there. We were a little concerned before if we weren't going to be able to make that happen. Any questions?
We're good.
Okay. So again, I've shown this slide before. This is just some of the important dates. It's not showing up great here. I apologize. I should have taken Zig's recommendation and put the white on green. I will go ahead and do that, and I know he's back there smiling. So really, this is just a visual representation of who's already gone through and what's happening. So we're training groups, right? And as we're training, then they got to start getting into the test system. And then once they're in that test system, we've got to make sure that they're prepared to go live. So that's really all that this slide is pointing out. And again, we added Group 6 as a separate group. But as of right now, all the way, the big three, Group 3, HHS, and Public Works, Group 4, and Sheriff, Group 5. So they're all now officially getting into the system. So it's very exciting. Absolutely.
One thing I think that's worth pointing out with this is how complex this rollout is. And I think you all should just have an understanding that while we were on the WFM side live with about 750, and then we rolled into different groups, there's different phases that are happening. And again, credit to the team of keeping this all like straight, right? Like who is live, who is training, who are we doing a parallel with? All of that is what this slide represents. And so this matrix of who's doing what, I think, is really important to understand. And again, kudos to the team to keep this all straight of what environment are we in, who are we letting into production, who are we preventing to get into tests so there's no confusion. And also then the leaders of these different areas have been really great in terms of understanding where there are. I think of, like Deborah over in Public Works and Corey with the sheriff, and I shouldn't name people because I'm going to forget them, but David Merriman with HHS. These guys have really taken it on and pushed to their teams where they're at in the process and getting them ready to go live with WFM. So really, again, it's a simple chart, but it's really quite complex on what we're doing. And so you may be hearing different things of when items are happening. This slide's trying to represent that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so another short and sweet slide. I did not have this one for our roundtable. I didn't have the information handy. This is information specific to us going live as of 3/13. So since then, this would be MyTime primarily MyTime issues. We've got some payroll issues such as I can't see my pay stub type things. But really out of this, 65 issues in about a month, which isn't much. And again, if you look at the majority of them, I'm only calling out 2 things that have really been an overarching item that we've worked through. And one was, again, just viewing the pay stubs, and then some tax variation questions, right? We know that we're still working on a residential tax withholding, so that's one. Or it could have been, again, hey, I'm getting a little bit more out or a little bit less out, and just questions as to why. So all in all, phenomenal, right? Again, we're working through the issues. We've still got 10 open, but I threatened the team this morning. I talked to the team this morning, and they're very well aware, and we're working through those.
And what is break fix?
So that is when there is a potential issue with the system. So maybe, again, it was pay stubs. So, hey, we found out that we can't get through it, viewing through this browser setting. I'm making that one up, but it's something that you need to fix. With that being said, there wasn't anything that was of any significant issue.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And this is Andy's turn.
All right, so the financial report, and what I have in this chart should look very familiar to the chart we presented last time. Just to kind of get your bearings on this, the columns will represent the category of expense attributed to the project. And we have our prior forecast. This is what I demonstrated in, I think it was January of this year, that was the former current forecast, and now what our current forecast is today. And so I'm going to jump to the bottom line, which is what everybody, wants to know the answer first, right? And so if you look at my signal or my indication of number 1, which is at the bottom there, as of this moment, which is based on our February actuals, we are forecasting about a $460,000 reduction as opposed to what I presented in January. Now, I've gotten a glimpse of our March financials, and it doesn't vary that much, so I'm comfortable that we won't see much of a difference when we get our March actuals in. So we have a $460,000 variance to the good for the program. That is primarily related to some negotiations with Infor for the extension. If you recall, we did have a little bit of an extension with Infor. We had forecasted an amount during the negotiation process. We were able to come in with a little bit better rate. We got a little bit of a discount related to some travel that did not happen. And so that represents the bulk of that $464,000 reduction. There is some hours in there, approximately $100,000 worth, that is technical development that we may see on the operations side. So to be clear, as we talked at length last meeting, that we will be ending the program in April, that capitalized program, and April 30th, and some of that work that was formerly forecasted to be part of the program will go into operations, and we will absorb that, and as I indicated last time, if we don't have enough money in our budget, we'll come back to you and tell you, and we'll talk about that. So about $100,000 of that $400,000 savings we may see in our operational budget. So just wanted to call that out. Again, that's for work that will be done on items that have already been implemented. And I think that that pretty much covers it, but there's always a lot of questions on the finance, so I'm happy to answer anything.
Are there any questions today on the finance?
President, I don't have a question, but I have a comment,
Okay.
if I may. Hello, good afternoon. I came into this at the very end of a very complex and nebulous process. And personalizing the players, your team, personifying them publicly. I love all the personal facts and details about you. It tells me all I really need to know about your leadership style and your abilities. And so I'm in a sorority, and when a particular committee has had an exceptional planning process or successful execution of a program, one might ask if we could accept that report with commendation. And so I may be a little out of order, but if that was the case, I would ask to accept your report with commendation, because you really have done an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman. And again, the credit goes to the team, right? I mean, the team did an unbelievable job. I don't know if that's an allowed, I'm new to the county too, I don't know if that's allowed, but we'll take it. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Just studying your numbers here a little bit. So are you saying that, because we've had different numbers for projections of what we think this project costs us in the end. So is the 33, that's 33,335,000, is that, I'm reading that correctly? Or the total, 33 million?
So that number is to give you that actual spend to date, right? So the forecast really builds on that actual, and being on a cash, another thing I'm getting used to in the county is that we're on a cash basis. We've written checks, paid people, whatever that $33 million figure. We anticipate to the forecast number, checks that we'll have to write before the program closes.
Does that number include that?
Oh, yeah. So for instance, we anticipate that we'll, as of April 30th or thereabouts, we'll write checks to the total of 34.7 million. And right now, we're sitting at 33.3 million. So we figure between now and then, we're forecasting about $1 million, whatever that math is, 1.4 million that we'll be writing checks for, including payroll, right? So there'll be a big chunk of that as payroll.
So if anyone were to ask, what is the actual spend as of the end of April 30th, 2022, you would say that it's 34.7.
That's right. That's correct. And again, I've seen the March, we're about there. The only way I'd give myself a little bit of leeway is the capitalized labor has been a consistent number. We are working to reevaluate that number to understand, and that's for everybody in the room, that is where we take a look at the amount of effort that our internal team has put on the project. And so we've instituted some new time recording abilities that may have a factor in this. So that number may fluctuate slightly, but I think we're fairly close there.
If I may, the external number, the 26.8, is that all inclusive of consultants and all that entered into the capital piece from 2017, 2015, whenever it is that we...
Great, I don't know the start date, but yet, the answer to your question is yes. That 26.8 is the checks that we have written to predominantly consultants, some hardware that we had to buy. It's really those categories that you see on the left there of the chart. That would all go into that external number.
Just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the end of our presentation.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and we will have you back a little bit later on to present on the Harris project. But right now, we have someone who has to catch a plane, and I'm going to call forward our distinguished consultant, Zig Burzens, and I also have to take this opportunity to give Zig a shout out and say that he has been an important part of this process of guiding this council and helping us to be more effective in our oversight role and working with the administration to do our little part to help get us to this point. So thank you very much for all that you've done for us.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Need to see, good. And let's see here. Okay. Well, I want to congratulate the team. Without a doubt, I mean, I think we're finally there, and that certainly is good news. I do have to say that I can't say we're completely done, but we're almost done. So I think that's important. So the ERP project, as it was redefined 2 years ago, which was referred to as Phase 1, that, of course, brings the question of what about 2, 3, and 4? But Phase 1, it will be complete on April the 30th, and I believe that. I think it's going to happen. And there are, of course, indicators, and I think you've just heard about some of those. You know, the time capture solution was successfully used for the first batch of employees. That's about 700 people, starting in 3/13, and they were paid. Data flowed to the payroll system, and on 4/1, they received their pay. Okay. An additional almost 3,000 employees are going to be included in the next 2 pay periods. So the numbers are starting to rise. And so far, every indication is that it will occur, and that the issues, as you heard, there was really only one break fix. There's only one thing that looks like it needs to be corrected in the software, which is very good news. The other thing that the team didn't talk to you about, but you know, there were some manually created checks you know, to address some potential issues, if you will, in terms of how the data was processed. But it was a very small number. And you know, I would expect that that's something that they will track as they go forward in telling you how many checks are manually created outside the system to make any kind of corrections that may be necessary. So the bottom line, and I think the team told you this, the bottom line is that the new payroll system paid everybody on the 4-1 payroll, which is fantastic. And I think they also talked to you, and I'm using different terms, different words, but the message is the same, that the rollout is going to get extended. It is being staggered. And there's about 2,600 employees that are going to be using the new time collection system referred to as WFM, Workforce Management, over the next 3 months. There was a seventh grouping added, which is the Board of Elections, and they opted to be late in the year because of the elections and so forth, which is understandable. And the team has, in essence, carved out, as was described to you, that the remaining employees after April 30th will basically be handled by the DOIT personnel, and it will not be part of the capital project. Lastly, the second bullet point, you know, the team will be completing the Sherpa implementation. So over the last 2 years, we've been talking about the Sherpa budget formulation management component, BFM, and it was referred to as BFM Part 3 because Parts 1 and 2 were done almost 3 years ago. So that's finally getting to the point where it'll get done. And they're targeting that now for August of this year. So the bottom line is it's time to move on. Okay, we need to pat each other on the back and say, let's keep going. Let's find out what else we got to worry about. So I do want to show you a couple of images here. They are pertinent. They are pertinent. It looks like we have some spilt milk. It looks like we have a rowboat that's partially sunk. And we've got a gate that's closed, so that maybe the horse is gone. Let's find out. So yes, there has been some money spilled. There's no question about that. We've gone from $21 million to 35, round numbers. But the project has not sunk. It certainly came considered, in many cases, it was in trouble, but it has not sunk, and I don't think it will. Okay? And the gate for runaway spending has been closed. I mean, the team is, instead of asking you for more money, they're basically saying, "I'll give you some back," which is a good thing. I would repeat what the kinds of things that Andy was telling you, I mean, and Connie were telling you. I mean, it's the team that did this. Yes, there's been some excellent leadership in the last 6 months, without a doubt. But some of these people have been involved for 6 years, and they hung in there. They hung in there. Many have given up vacations. Many of them have worked extremely long hours. You know, the final 6 months has been gut-wrenching. It's been gut-wrenching to the team. The team has overcome just a myriad of issues over the last 6 years, and many of them occurring in the last year. You know, there's no question that there were data surprises, and we've talked about that. The Achilles heel of this project has been, for years, surprises in the data in terms of accuracy, completeness, meaningfulness, that sort of thing. But there have also been some surprises with regard to the configuration. Do you recall that we got surprised that there are 32 union contracts? Oh, and we all of a sudden have 2,000 work rules that we need to get in there, which was not planned originally. So there were some surprises that were difficult and made everything more complex. There's tremendous amount of key personnel turnover, and it was at all levels. It was not just at the staff. I mean, it was also middle management, executives, throughout the entire project over this time period. They had to overcome COVID. It's been 2 years. There were a lot of changes in expectations. When you go for 6 years on something that was originally planned for 2 years, your expectations start changing on you. I mean, they're doing business a little differently 6 years later than they did 6 years ago. And that's causing changes and cause changes. There has been general project fatigue. I mean, 6 years is a long time. A long time to keep at it. And there have been a sine wave kind of a thing. There have been some extremely exciting moments when things were launched, and there have also been some down moments for the team. So I can only say job well done. Job well done. I think it's time to eliminate some crutches. There's a tendency, especially when you have something lasting this long, there's a tendency to start continuing to rely on what you're used to. Okay, what you're used to. So there's this tendency to then rely on, right now, to rely on some things that are in essence a crutch and making it very difficult. And you heard this from the team. Change management is crucial. Absolutely it is. But that's what pushes against the fact that you've got a new system, new decisions, new processes, new procedures. You got to work with that. So currently the county has been calling GHR, which is the N4 payroll solution, HR solution. They've been calling that the system of record. They've been calling that the system of record for 3 years. Yet, what's happening is because there's been so much turnover in the HR department, there's a tendency for the HR department to focus and rely on the legacy HR solution as opposed to the new one, which means they tend to make changes, address change, name change, new employee, et cetera, doing that in the old system, and then they have to make it fit in the new system. Ergo, what people have referred to over the last few years as duplicate data entry. And what does that do to the HR folks? It puts a lot of pressure on them. It also means that sometimes what you expect to see in GHR, which was supposed to be the system of record, may not be up to date based on some changes that were made in the legacy environment. So that crutch needs to be removed. Another crutch we have out there is the mainframe. Now, there's a lot of systems on there. I don't know all of them, but 4 are listed up here that are the major big player systems that are currently on the mainframe. All right? 2 of them, famous, the accounting system, buy speed, purchasing, have been replaced. And to my knowledge, they have been retired. People don't use them anymore, to my knowledge. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my understanding. 2 remain. And again, we're talking about the major components that are sitting out there. There's a lot of smaller ones, I'm sure. And that's the legacy HR environment, SAP, and the N4 payroll. Interestingly enough, our legacy payroll is actually an N4 product, sometimes referred to as GIAC. That's still out there, okay? So now that we've gotten to where we are, we need to say, time to stop using those. We need to do that. So we've got to take the crutch and throw it away. So how do we remove the crutch? Certainly we have to hang on to the mainframe long enough to do whatever special reporting we need to do in the short term. Again, because people are comfortable with the reports that they've used to use. Got to continue that for the short term. But we might want to start thinking seriously about cutting off access to updating and maintaining the HR data. That doesn't mean get rid of the system. It says cut off access. Okay? Cut off access. That forces them to go to the new system. It forces them to make the change. Okay, and the suggested date, of course, is that's when the project concludes and you're paying everybody on the new payroll system. Okay, as of 4:30, that would be a very reasonable target to cut off the access. And if you do that, you are enforcing the fact that GHR, the in-force solution, is the system of record. That's where you go to add employees and change their schedule and change their address or whatever the case may be. We do need to address this issue of the 2,500 employees that probably will not be processed by WFM. This has been a known condition for quite a while. Okay, so these people will continue to use Kronos. They will continue to collect the time the way they have for years, and then they will process a spreadsheet with their time to the new payroll system, which they did on 4/1. Okay, they did that on 4/1, so that works. They got paid. But the question is, how long is that going to keep going, and what do you need to do to make sure that that will continue without any hiccups? Then you also need to consider this issue of responding to the squeaky wheel. I only listed 4 major systems that are on the mainframe. There are probably quite a few more, but most of them are probably going to be relatively small. They're going to be more reporting oriented. So the question becomes, when are you ready to say, I'm going to cut off access to those? And because they're relatively small, if you cut off access, you'll find out what's on there very quickly. Somebody will say, I couldn't get my report. Well, let's go solve the problem. Because we can always turn the access back on. And it hasn't gone away. But we can certainly find out what it is we need to do. And that's what I refer to as responding to the squeaky wheel. As I've said many times, the Achilles heel for the county is the data. It's got to be accurate, it's got to be current, it's got to be up to date. You got to know where it is. Okay, you got to maintain it in a timely manner. But a lot of that data resides on the mainframe. That's because those major systems reside on the mainframe. So the famous history, the HR history, payroll history, all those things are sitting out there. They need to be moved off so that at some point you can cut off paying money to maintain the mainframe, which is not inconsequential. All right? So I guess I just want to, remind us all, and this has not been mentioned by the project team for 2 years. But 3 years ago, I've been around a while, I guess I know some of these things. 3 years ago, we had this long conversation about what do we do about data warehousing, and what do we do about data repositories, what do we do about history, where are we going to put that history? Well, the answer was we're going to put it on the data lake. When we went out and spent money on the data lake, we designed the data lake, we started supposedly using it, have not mentioned it for 2 years. I presume it's still there, and it certainly is the place where you were supposed to put all of your data. Maybe it's time to start doing that. Maybe it's time to start doing that. I have no idea how long it may take to do that, but the priority probably is let's get it off the mainframe. Let's get that data off the mainframe. If we do, then we start getting closer and closer to the concept of shutting it down. And what I mean by shutting it down is right now, we don't have a mainframe. We're paying the state to use their mainframe. That's what we're doing. Okay? So we need to stop making that payment. Now, I've got some numbers. They're probably dated. That's all I could find. But my understanding is we're spending about $500,000 a year on the mainframe to the state. So once the applications are replaced, once the data is removed, in theory, you don't have to pay the state for using the mainframe. Now, we've also been spending quite a bit of money for specialized consulting support for SAP, which is the HR component. SAP is a complex, convoluted, hard to maintain solution, period, end of story. The county does not have the resources. They contract the resources to take care of that. Well, in theory, that's all been replaced by GHR. It's all been replaced by GHR. So at some point in time, when you finally say, I don't need to take care of SAP on the mainframe, even if it still resides there, if I cut off access, I'm not going to do anything with it, then you don't have to pay the contractors. And that historically has been, as I understand it, about $500,000 a year. Now, there's a long list of some other applications. You get some savings by saying, I don't need to use those anymore. I get some kind of replacement application. So I'm thinking that you might be able to save as much as $1.2 million. That's a nice number. Yeah. But is it going to happen right away? Of course not. Is it reasonable for you to take a look and maybe in early next year say, hey, how do we stand on that? What kind of reductions are we getting because of the mainframe going away? Or the processing on the mainframe going away? So, can't be 100% perfect. We got to think in terms of how does this projection get dampened down? Some of the key questions is, can DOIT establish enough knowledgeable resources in its organization? They're short. They need resources. Well, yes, they have to go pay for those resources, but it's certainly not going to be as much as contractors. Will the HR department replace the staff that they have lost? My understanding is there's been a significant drop-off in HR staff resources in that department. Somebody's got to sit there and do the work. And that's my understanding is it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. A lot of people leaving. So that needs to be boosted. Does the county have the gumption and discipline to make GHR the system of record? That's called throwing away the crutch. That's throwing away the crutch. And then can Data Lake be the history repository? I certainly think it can, but somebody's got to sit there and actually do some work to identify the data, organize it, structure it, figure out what's going to be brought over, and then move it from the mainframe environment to the data lake. So let's talk about painting the wall. You have a question, sir?
So I just think it's time for a check-in with the committee, see if anyone has any questions up to this point.
So
Ms.
Zig, if
Baker.
I'm understanding you correctly, we're really talking about moving away from the day-to-day issues that have been what we've been talking about for the last few years, and moving now into the bigger picture of what we don't have to do anymore, of talking about data that we should be capturing in different ways, and replacing perhaps some of the people that we've lost. It seems like we're on a different conversation and moving towards that more so than the struggles of day-to-day accomplishments and launching and modules and all those kind of things that.
That's right. That's right.
That's a good conversation to have. Shows us that we're moving forward past day-to-day activities.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, continue.
Okay, let's talk about painting the walls, finishing up. This is a chart that the team has shown you quite a few times over the last 6 to 8 weeks. I just want to make sure we recognize, this is the staggered launch of employees having their time collected in WFM, all right? And you can see the first 2 groups are done. They have processed their time, and in fact, some of you may have already processed your time for the last week. That's a good thing. And you saw from the team that the number of issues and concerns is minimal, which is also a good thing. So presuming that that's going to occur going forward, there's no reason why the rest of this won't follow that schedule. Okay, and now I do suggest that we need to pay attention to group 3, which is a large group. That's 1,850 people. So that's the next big piece. Right? And that's just a volume statement. So we need to pay attention to that one. And then the other one that I think that everybody needs to pay attention to from a risk perspective is the sheriff. Okay? Large group of people, a lot of 24-hour special rules, special bargaining unit, you name it. There's all kinds of interesting things that are going to happen with the sheriff, just because of the nature of their work.
So technically we started Group 3 yesterday, practically we started it today. And if that's successful, we'll be at the halfway point in terms of the numbers, so that's a significant milestone.
I asked Chair, so the 410 production time, when is the paycheck? When do those Group 3 receive?
Well, the 410 pay period, that's when it starts. You have 2 weeks of pay, then you got a 1 week lag, and the paycheck comes out on that week after that. So one week in arrears.
I'd like to know that, so I know that date. We'll ask.
I have to get my calendar out.
I'll look it up.
21 days on top of 410, so I guess 430 and or 5/1. Okay. We talked about the non-executive agencies that are going to continue using what they've done before. This is the list. I just putting it up there so we are reminded. It's mainly prosecutors and courts, mainly, but they are continuing to do what they have done before. I want to remind us all about finishing Sherpa. It still is hanging out there. In order for Sherpa to provide what is expected to be provided, which is full-time equivalent calculations for the preparation of the quarterly budget report. That's what that's for. And it needs, now has all the data that it needs. It has everybody being paid on payroll, so therefore the data is all there. Now all we need to do is extract that data and pass the data to Sherpa, and Sherpa can do the full-time equivalent calculations, and away we go. The OBM can generate the report using Sherpa.
So we get the biennial budget update the first council meeting in November, which the administration will have to be working on sometime during the summer. So if all goes well, that budget update could be done using the new Sherpa system.
Correct. So as I said earlier, I don't think the team's going to be coming to you to ask for more appropriations for the capital project. Good news, the gate's shut. No more. There's no, in fact, they're dropping things down, giving you some money back. That's a good thing as well. But, we just have to recognize that what's spent is spent. I mean, that's water over the dam. But there are some, and I think Andy alluded to this, there are some opportunities for lowering license fees, which is an in-for contracting statement. So I just wanted to, show you what some of the deliverables are, and we'll talk about that. But there are some deliverables that are documented. They're part of the contract. It's one thing to say the project's going to be done on April 30th, and it's also one thing to say that the in-for personnel associated with the fixed fee contract will stop on 4/30. But it's quite another to say, oh, by the way, you owe us the following deliverables. Now, what those mean is that there should be a document developed by Infor for every one of those. Should be a document, And it should be signed by Infor that says, we have provided to you the following, and describe it, and then the county has to accept that. I don't see that happening yet. So that's concerning, but that's a contractual statement and it needs to be taken care of. Okay? Needs to be taken care of. Now, there are 2 items on there that are in red. That's because I'm trying to understand, and I'm sure Andy's working this. If you end the agreement and end the relationship with Infor for the contracts perspective, that's 430, because I realize Infor personnel will continue on going forward, working for the operation. I've got that. But from the contract perspective, where do we put the Sherpa piece if that's a deliverable that's actually in the contract? How do you call the contract done? Okay? And I'm just repeating what was presented to you by the team. The only question that I've got on here is, where's the Sherpa piece? If it's already been paid for, then it should show up there. There should be a line item that says Sherpa solution prepaid or whatever you want to call it, so that you can say everything's done on 4/30. If it drags out to August when it's targeted, then I'm not sure you can say the contract's done. So it needs to be resolved. This is an eye chart. What's important here is to remind you that this is what you bought. 2018, this is what you bought. The list on the left-hand side are all the modules, components, and pieces of the ERP solution that you had originally thought was going to be $21 million. The red arrows are pointing to the various components that got deferred on a continuing basis. They got deferred on a continuing basis to the point where they were carved out. Okay, they were carved out and they were dropped off of phase 1. The reason I bring that up is your license agreement is for everything that's on this page. That's the license agreement. Now, if something gets carved out and you're not going to use it potentially, then one would think that you might get some kind of relief on the license agreement. For instance, enterprise asset management. You've heard EAM for years now. Well, if you look at the right side on the chart, you see the word done. Well, that's pointing at work order management. If you'll recall, the very first component that was implemented 4 years ago was work order management. Very successfully, it was implemented. Public Works has been using it for years now. Okay? But everybody was referring to it as EAM. Well, it's not EAM, it's one of 7 components. The rest of the pie chart hasn't been done. And the question becomes, is there any intent for it to be done? You'll notice that some work has been started on asset management and inventory management. But my understanding is that's been halted. And again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, is this a place where the license agreement, the licensing for all 7 of these components, if you're not going to do them, maybe you can get some relief. And when I talk about relief, we've got to remember that the licensing agreement with Infor started at $1.45 million annually. And I believe the contract was 10 years. Well, it'd be nice if it were dropped a few $100,000. Opportunity 2, you have heard over the years about a component of this ERP solution is referred to as talent management. Well, in the early days, the only thing that was implemented was talent acquisition. Now, there was some discussion about the HR knowledge base. Okay? There was some discussion about the HR case management, and learning management is the training thing. Yeah, I'm sure you remember that because there were times when learning management was used as part of the downline implementation. Great. But my point is, only 4 of these portions of talent management have been completed. The rest have not. Again, the question is, are you going to? It's been carved out, so I mean, it's been carved out by Infor, so it's not, they're not contractually expected to provide this anymore. So the question becomes, what are you going to do with it? And do you have an opportunity to affect the actual licensing agreement? So quickly want to talk about to be or not to be. Do you want to have capital projects or not have capital projects going forward? We've heard this before. Quite a few components remain. I've shown you 2 pages of those, but it's about 20%. And we've heard that number before, that about 80% is represented by phase 1, phase 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever is the remaining 20% if you intend to go forward. The county, it's been 6 years, so the county needs to redo their needs assessment on those components. They have to. It's been too long. Things have changed. And the example is, do I still need to automate expense management, which is expense reporting? Do I still need to have total rewards reporting? So we it needs to do some determinations and some assessments. The next thing that has to happen is, do you want these things to be a capital project? We've been down this road now for 6 years. Okay, this is a capital project. It's had its goods and bads. Do you want to do that going forward? Or do you start to piecemeal these things? Do a little bit here, do a report here, do a report there. So what are some of the project candidates? So you could implement a new customer relationship management solution. That's theoretically part of an ERP solution, which the county actually did as a pilot from Infor 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Do you want to implement expense management, Infor talent management, which is the rest of that pie chart we looked at? I didn't even mention the rest of the, EAM, which is the enterprise asset management. So that's the rest of that pie chart. Somewhere along the line, version 11 continues to raise its ugly head. And you've already been told that that's a re-implementation. I mean, so that's in multiples of 1 million. So these are things that I think that the council needs to be asking the team, what are you going to do? And they need, if it's going to be projects, they need to tell you how much, because you're looking at, again, another potential appropriation, maybe not this year, but next year. Where does all that fit in your capital planning and all that kind of thing? Those are things that need to occur over the next few months. Last, I want to talk about post-implementation audits. We've talked about these things in the past. And the reason we talked about them in the past is because you actually had portions of the system launch. So work order management has been in production for 4 years. GHR benefits and open enrollment has been in production for 3 years. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be looking at doing a post-implementation audit on the ones that have been finished. And now you've gotten to the point where, oh, payroll's done, right? So there are 3 kinds of post-implementation audits. There's a functional audit. Does the system component operate as expected? That's what a functional post-implementation audit is. A project costing audit. This is the one that most people are familiar with. This is the one that tends to be very auditing related. Okay, how did we spend our money? Okay, and then there's a performance audit. Does the system component meet the expected benefits? Now the benefits issue arises again. Because there was an expectation when you acquired the solution that it was going to do something for you. It was going to provide you with value. Okay? Has it? Now, can't make that statement for something like payroll just yet. But you sure can with work order management because it's been operating for 4 years. You got a 4-year history of performance of what that system has done for Public Works. Seems to me like it's time to take a look at that. So what's the timing of a post-implementation audit? Certainly after the component is launched, okay? After a reasonable stabilization period. I would suggest to you that open enrollment has had a reasonable stabilization period, 3 years. Work orders has had a 4-year stabilization period, very reasonable. Payroll, not so much, okay? It also should be before you lose the corporate knowledge, before the project players and staff move on. Okay, you need to have that corporate knowledge. And you certainly, again, you don't want to audit something for 10 years. Things change. I mean, you need to do everything within a year when you actually conduct the audit. I like to see them in 6-month increments. So what are some current candidates? Certainly a project costing audit. You might want to do that early June. There are functional audits, and I've listed the functional arenas and an approximate timing that would make some sense. And notice that I'm showing 6-month periods. But I do want to highlight for you the financial management one. And the reason I want to highlight that for you is that the county made a fundamental process, procedural change to the in-force system 3.5 years ago. They changed the system from an accrual accounting system to a cash-based accounting system. Actually, it's a modified cash-based accounting system. That's a major deal. It affects the way things balance and reconcile, period. It does. Well, functionally, is it working? Is it happening? Because when you go down the path of putting in version 11, guess what's going to cause you a serious, serious implementation problem? Because they're going to come at you with a accrual-based solution. I'm telling you. It's going to be, and you're going to find yourself in the same boat that you found yourself in 3.5 years ago. What changes do we have to make this cash? And I would suggest to you that's serious. That is an audit functionally that needs to be done before you go too far down the road, especially if some of the things that might be going on today is people might still be relying on their crutches. I would not be surprised. Now, I have not looked historically at any of the things that have gone live in the last few years. I mean, that's not my charge. But the post-implementation audit team certainly should. And then performance auditing, again, did you achieve your benefits? So I just wanted to show you what a functional audit tends to do. How does that get accomplished? You compare the end results against the original requirements. You compare the end result against the design decisions. You compare the end result against as-built documentation. You identify and determine the extent of workarounds. Sound like a crutch? Identify, determine the extent of issues, problems, bugs since launch. I don't know how many there were. I don't know if they're still struggling with things. I don't know if people are still saying things like, I used to get that report and I don't get it anymore. I mean, that's entirely possible. Won't come free. Now, there's an internal audit department, but I am aware of the fact that there is no IT auditor in that department. They have auditors, but they have lost their IT expertise. Well, what that takes you down the road of, well, how do I get that IT expertise? from an auditing perspective? Well, you probably contract it. Okay, so I just tried to, first of all, estimate what's the size of these audits in terms of hours. So that's the way internal auditors think. How many hours is this audit? And is the resource internal or external? Now, you'll notice as soon as we got to the tough ones, which require an IT auditor to functionally take a look at the kinds of things that are necessary from a functional audit perspective, those are external. And as soon as that happens, all of a sudden, I've got some spend. Now, notice up at the top, I just used an estimate of $150 an hour. That's how I got those numbers. So if you did all of this, it's $500,000. Now, you don't need to do all of it, and you can certainly spread it out, but that gives you orders of magnitude. And lastly, I guess I just want to make sure that we recognize that you don't want stale results. If you're doing a post-implementation audit, you can't afford to wait just because you don't have the money. I mean, if you don't have the funding, you know, if you wait 3 years from now to do a functional audit, you've got a mess. You got people that are using their crutch. You got people that are doing all kinds of workarounds. You got people that have made changes without documenting them. You've got all kinds of things happening that get you into deep trouble. So I would suggest to you that the functional audit should be conducted sooner rather than later. Questions?
Questions by my colleagues? Well, I have one, which is that besides that it could give us some valuable information about decision-making around version 11, are there other things that could come out of these audits that actually save the county money as opposed to just providing us information on what we did well and what we did not so well?
The answer is yes, especially if you can focus on those functional audits and focus on the performance audits. The functional audits allow you to identify where people are not using the system, okay? They are creating workarounds. They are oh, gee, I just run a spreadsheet and I do my analysis as opposed to using the system and run the analysis in the system. I mean, those kinds of things will very quickly pop up. Without a doubt, they'll pop up. And your functional audit team will identify that kind of thing. That's exactly what they'll do. And when that happens, you start getting benefits, improvements, process improvements, all of these, because all of a sudden the extra work goes away. You will find that there are places where people are doing dual entry still. Guaranteed that's going to be there, okay? So that's on the functional audit side. On the performance audit side, when you have the independent external person taking a look and saying, okay, now here's what the system does and what kinds of things are you improving? What kind of benefits are you achieving? You identify places where you can achieve more. Oh, you didn't do that. Why don't you? Why don't you? You know, so again, you would actually see opportunities to increase value or benefits from a performance audit. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Other questions by my colleagues? Okay.
So that's a lot to take in, all of
This
the,
is one of my shorter ones.
after the story, after the fact, looking forward as to the 20% of what we need to yet do, and what do we pick from that 20%, and how does the licensing and all play a role in that? That's a lot. So I guess I would ask, and it may be an unfair question, but the 20% that we're talking about here, the employee goal management, succession management, employee performance management, are those things that will just evolve because the nuts and bolts of the ERP system is moving along and we're not, it's becoming a machine in its own right. That we have time now to reflect back on the reporting part of the ERP, which we needed to take out because we were too involved in making sure that everything was working properly. Do we need to come back and say, what about that employee goal management report? Or what about that succession management? Or will those be things that will just happen because it's just normally the next piece of what we do?
They are components that the executive steering committee need to address in terms of whether or not they expect or want to continue on with those. It's on them. It's not on the IT department. Okay, IT department says, yep, you want it in, we'll put it in. So I know that there's been conversations with the past two directors of HR as to whether or not do we really want to get into employee performance management? Do we really want to get into goal setting? These are what I refer to or think of as the softer side of HR management systems. And they are a nice to have. But they still take energy to implement. I mean, they don't come free. And so there's some data entry requirements, there's some reporting requirements, and people tend to say, well, wait a minute, why do I need to do that? So it's up to them. And it's not something that is going to harm you, but by the same token, again, depends on where their head is at. Are there benefits or values to the organization if you sit there and say, hey, will I get people working better, more productive if I focus on managing their goals? That's an HR decision. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, and I guess I would ask, because this is, above my understanding of moving past the in the weeds kind of, let's get this done, which is where we've been up until now. What would you say of the things in that 20% that haven't been done that is, in your opinion, absolute? We need to do this, and there shouldn't be much discussion about it.
I think COVID is just about done, so people are going to start traveling again. So I think your expense reporting is a valuable tool. Okay, so expense management is their term for it. It's a valuable tool and shouldn't be all that hard to implement. Okay, so yeah, I would go that route. I think reporting of total compensation is an employee benefit. It's not hard to put that in there and say, well, hey, this is your employee benefit statement at the end of the year. Look how much the county is putting in for you. Look how much your retirement is worth. Look how, that's what that does. I would do that. EAM, completely underutilized. I mean, that is an underutilized solution. I mean, inventory management, asset management, no question in my mind that it should be rolled out. I mean, now, it's complex. And why is it complex? You have lots of assets, okay? You have lots of assets, okay? Why is inventory management complex? You have lots of items. But I'm thinking about it now from an auditor's perspective. How do you know where all the sand goes, and how do you know, all the material that gets dropped at some construction site? I mean, those are all things that would be nice if you had tight controls over it. And the way you do that is with inventory management. So, but that requires you to tie into purchasing. I mean, complex. Okay, complex, absolutely. So, but that, that's one of the reasons I'm sure why it just sort of got deferred or said, well, do this later, or, there's all kinds of logic there. Those are the ones that I think make a difference.
If I I may ask, the Public Works, which, as you stated, was one of the first, and was, I think, hopeful that that would be one of the most return on investment piece because of where they were and where they are now, going from really a manual system to a very automated system. So those types of changes, I would think, would be the lowest hanging fruit of being able to deliver how it is that has saved us time, has saved us money, has saved us efficiencies. Maybe we're able to do more projects within 1 year because we're more efficient in how we do it. I mean, where does that play a role now that we're on our last module? How does that play a role in
Well,
being able to at least identify one piece?
you bet. And it was a low-hanging fruit. I mean, there's no question. That's why everybody wanted to do it first. But if you go after it now and say, okay, I want to do a performance audit, one, I want to show and prove that it can be done, that you can estimate what those benefits are. You can then track what those benefits are, and you can find out exactly how you want to do that going forward with other implementations. So absolutely, I think it makes an awful lot of sense. You know, the other one that's a low-hanging fruit is IT. Yeah. Absolutely it is. I mean, now, 5, 6 years ago, no. But, at some point, we got to say we're going to stop using that crutch. We're going to stop using that mainframe, wherever that is, whether it's the end of this year, middle of next year, but some large numbers start coming into play.
Right, I mean, when we stopped doing the dual system, we just saved an awful lot of time and effort and
Absolutely.
confidence at moving forward and away from the antiquated system.
You bet. I mean, people have been doing dual entry on time collection, on HR. I mean, there's an awful lot of energy that's been put in by HR staff and payroll staff and timekeeping staff across the board for months now. At some point, one would hope that it's going to die off.
Okay, good. Thank you, Zig, I appreciate it.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your service. You have sufficient time to catch your plane.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
Have a good day.
okay. We're now going to bring Director Johnson back to tell us about the Harris property system.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Actually, I'm going to invite up Debbie Daftovich, who has really been the executive overseeing the Harris Tax Project. And just a quick note, I mean, you saw a lot of accolades for the ERP team, and well-deserved. I'm sure if you asked Deb, she would say that sometimes the Harris feels a little bit like the stepchild in all of this. But I will tell you that the effort that she has done to keep the Harris Tax Project alive and functioning, she has lost her project manager few months ago, right? So she as an executive has stepped in and kept this thing alive. So just wanted you to be aware of that there's a lot of other good things that are happening in the department besides ERP. So with that, I'll turn it over to Deb.
Okay. All right, so thank you for having me today. My presentation will be brief, so hopefully you will enjoy it. Last time we came to you, it was in January, and we announced at that time that we were entering user acceptance testing. Here's the agenda of what we're going over today, but to dive right in, we are currently in user acceptance testing right now. That means the end users who will be using the product are actually testing the product. As you know, in 2020, we had a project reboot where we basically pretty much started over. The configuration that had been delivered by the company we weren't happy with, so we kind of like ERP, pretty much started over.
We are also in the beginning of billing parallel. So user acceptance testing as a whole, we are 66% complete. We're currently in a billing parallel, which was delayed due to some errors that we had found in the first delivery. So we had to rework that. There's no impact on the schedule right now. And then after our billing parallel and user acceptance testing, we will go into system integration testing, so testing the interfaces to other systems, final bug fixes, end user training, pre-deployment, and then go live. And then we have a couple of post-go live items that will happen next year. This is the high-level schedule. Again, we are in the middle of user acceptance testing. We hope to wrap that up by the end of May. We wanted the whole month of June to be able to resolve any bugs or defects that we found as a result of user acceptance testing and the billing parallel. And again, the billing parallel was we took a snapshot of production in August of 2020, and we are going through those same processes in the new product and in the existing product to compare tax bills and all functionality to make sure that it is accurate. So, you know, like I said, we hope to wrap up the user acceptance testing that includes billing parallel by the end of April, which is an aggressive time frame, and then dive into system integration testing. With the system integration testing as a whole, we are 66% complete. So we did see some significant increases from the last reporting period as it relates to tax bill dependencies, some treasury functions, overall parcel maintenance, post-collection activities. A lot of the tests that we have in this UAT were contingent upon our billing parallel being ready. And in that area, we are 44% complete. So we have 290 tests in the billing parallel. Again, these are mostly treasurer's staff that will be doing this testing. And it relates to, you know, levy calculations, special assessments, escrow payments, and surplus transfers and credits. This slide shows the testers that will be doing that testing and what our plan is for the next several weeks. So as you can see, some testers have more tests than others, but we've spread them out over the next 2 weeks with a couple days of buffer time to ensure that, you know, if we do find errors, that those errors can be turned around and resolved and retested, you know, according to the timeline. Our budget has not changed since the last reporting period, so we have not made any updates to the budget. We are still under budget and have a balance of $4.7 million. We are in negotiation with the vendor on some credits, which we hope to be wrapping up in the next couple days, and I think the council will be happy with the negotiations that have occurred there. Our next milestone, as you recall, we negotiated updated milestone payments. Our next milestone will be the acceptance testing of user acceptance testing. So the criteria for that is a 95% pass rate with less than 5% of the test cases being of high or critical priority. So overall, we are 66% on the way to that threshold. Actually, there's one change on this change order slide. I apologize, it says no changes, but we did add the co-file interface as an additional change order. So that is the recorder solution where we want to be able to be in the Harris system looking at a property record, and we would like to click on a link to open up a document that is going to be residing in co-file. So we did add that. We do not have final costs on these interfaces as of yet. We're still in negotiation with Harris, but we are still have are under budget on the contingency dollars here. So we originally had a little over $600,000 budgeted for it, and we have authorized about $300,000. $308,000 and paid about $154,000.
So
Yep.
on the K file, can you give us a ballpark on that?
We do not have a total cost on that yet, so we're just in the requirements gathering phase.
Order of magnitude, are we talking 10,000, 100,000, a million?
I would say it's on the lower end, around 10,000.
Okay.
That would be my guesstimate, but again, we haven't seen total costs on that yet, but we believe it's not going to be a very difficult interface.
Thank you.
Some of the risks are repeats from the last slide. We are still understaffed in the treasurer's office, so, we are, again, the treasurer and the fiscal officer have authorized overtime to help staff complete those tests. And again, we've got a plan where we've got people assigned to specific tests, throughout the week to make sure that they're not overburdened in some areas. And we are, working with management to make sure that we've got adequate resources on that. And the completion of the interfaces for system integration testing. Again, we would like those to be done by the end of May, but typically interfaces, at times you'll see that they're closer towards the end of the project. We do believe that there's plenty of time to complete these interfaces. The point and pay interface, which is for the payments, that is a standard interface for Harris, so we believe that one should not be difficult. The treasurer kiosk, that is an interface to call up the payments in the lobby. Again, we don't see that as a very difficult or showstopper, as well as co-file. We've had some staffing updates. So the lead project manager at Harris resigned in February. And just today we learned that the junior project manager that has been on the Harris side, working with the county for at least the last 4 years, has also resigned due to medical issues. So the president of the professional services is heading up the project at this time, but we have gone through quite a few project managers on the Harris side, and it has caused some disruption. So that second line is incorrect because we just found out today that she, in fact, resigned. We were expecting her back this month. On the county side, we hired an analyst in March, and he was more of a technical analyst, and we've seen some really great results from him. He's working on security and permission, so maybe in a future presentation we'll give a shout out and give some love to some of our analysts and staff that are working on this project because they are doing a fantastic job as well. The analyst that we hired from the Treasury Department, she's really leading efforts on the Treasury testing, has been doing a lot of overtime working on the weekends and late at night to make sure that we were in a position to be able to have the Treasury Department focus on that billing parallel this week. And that was all I had.
So I'd like to welcome Council President Jones and ask if there's any questions by my colleagues. I'll start the questions.
Okay.
The question I have is that I recall that there was a whole second system that we deferred, and we're reviewing whether to do it with Harris, whether to do it with somebody else, and can you give us an update on the status of that?
So we did publish an RFI for a new CAMA system and any supplemental software that could assist the appraisal team with their 2022 reevaluation. That team is looking at a mobile field appraisal product that will allow them to go out in the field with a tablet and mark up properties and add notes, give them drive-by-drive or step-by-step driving directions and collect other information. They have not made a decision on which one they are going with, but we believe that that product will significantly enhance their ability to perform this reappraisal in a timely manner. Currently, they take out notebooks and they scribble in the notebooks. They bring the notebooks back to the office. They hire data entry clerks to enter that information in the system. This will all be done again on a tablet where they can upload it when they get back in the office, and everything is automated in that fashion.
Do we have a cost estimate?
We do not have a cost estimate on that right now. Again, it was just an RFI, so they'll be going through a procurement process and finalizing any costs on that.
And refresh our memory on where we are in the sexennial process. When is the next appraisal, and is it the full sexennial appraisal, or is it the 3-year update?
It is the full appraisal, so the state is requiring the plan. I don't know exactly when, but this year soon, within the next couple of months, I believe. So that's why the need to have a mobile field package will help this team. So that's what they're focusing on right now. The fiscal office doesn't believe that it would be a successful effort to be doing a mass reappraisal and implementing a new CAMA system at the same time. So while we are going to be looking at systems, they probably will not make an award for any CAMA system or any decision until after the reappraisal effort is over with.
And when does the reappraisal take place?
That will take place either later this year or next year. There's some activities that are going to occur this year, but I don't know the exact date that they have to turn that into the state. So they've already begun some of the activities that lead up to the mass reappraisal.
What year is the reappraisal year?
I believe it's 2023.
Okay. Other questions?
Just one. I was a little surprised how vulnerable we are to the Harris and their leadership. So, can you expand on that? How are we with working with that company? How does it impact us? And could it get worse?
I would say it's been disruptive from the project management side. We've gone through quite a few project managers, more than a hand's worth. I think early on there was a lot that was part of the problem. There was a lot of staff turnover in the beginning, and there maybe weren't the right people in the right seats at Harris that were doing some of the configuration. I think that the new leadership team that they brought in, the Spark Gordon that came on board, that took over, I believe, in 2020, he's done a really great job. There's been a very cooperative relationship between Harris and the county team, and I think he's added some very good resources. They understand the importance of going live this year, and we just had a conversation last week that, they've added additional technical staff that we had talked with, early on that we were very happy with. So they have added some resources, but again, the constant changing of hands with the project management responsibilities has been difficult.
If I may just follow, so do you anticipate that they are on a better track now with who they're hiring?
They are on hire to hire a new project manager, but, coming in this late in the game is going to be a little difficult. That's why the project director on the Harris side, is personally going to remain involved with this project. Yes.
You're confident in his?
Yes. Yeah, I'm very hopeful that it will be smooth moving forward.
Thank you, Chair.
Anything else? Thank you very much to you and your team. We'll keep our eyes on this.
Great, thank you.
And by way of miscellaneous business, we're about a month out from being able to access the first quarter actuals and have a review on that. I don't have any other miscellaneous business. Do any of my colleagues have any? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thanks very much for your time and attention.